Thank you for welcoming the Monuments Men. Ladies and gentlemen, and now please welcome our honored guests, members of the United States House of Representatives, members of the United States Senate, and the Speaker of the United States House of Representatives. Ladies and gentlemen, the Speaker of the United States House of Representatives, the Honorable John Boehner.
Since the days of the Revolution, every Congress has awarded gold medals to honor distinguished achievements. The first recipient was General George Washington in 1776. And to this day, there's no higher honor that we can bestow. Pursuant to H.R. 3658, we're gathered here today to present a medal in honor of the Monuments Men. The medal honors their heroic role in the protection and preservation of monuments, works of art, artifacts of cultural importance during and following World War II. The initial orders given by General Dwight D. Eisenhower, and Eisenhower stated that we are bound to respect those monuments so far as the war allows. We're honored to have with us today General Eisenhower's grandmother, Anne Eisenhower. Please join me in welcoming her. Also here today are some living members of the Monuments Men and, of course, their families. This is your day. Congratulations and welcome to the United States Capitol.
Ladies and gentlemen, please stand for the presentation of the colors by the United States Army Color Guard, the performance of our national anthem, and the retiring of the colors.
the dawn's early light, once so proudly we hailed at the twilight's last gleaming, whose broad stripes and bright stars through the perilous fight o'er the ramparts we watched were so gallantly streaming. The rockets of the mercy through the night that our flag was still there. Oh, say does that star-spangled banner yet wave o'er the land of the brave and the hope of the brave.
Ladies and gentlemen, please remain standing as the chaplain of the United States Senate, Dr. Barry Black, gives the invocation.
Let us pray. Eternal and sovereign Lord, you alone are God. And though the wrong seems often strong, you are the ruler yet. Thank you for the many heroines and heroes of World War II who more than self their country loved. We feel gratitude for this Congressional Gold Medal ceremony in honor of the monument's men. We praise you for these members of the greatest generation who found and saved cultural treasures from theft or destruction. As the Nazis rampaged, Lord, you used courageous people to prevent the destruction of millennia of culture. We're grateful for the leaders who launched efforts to preserve the artistic treasures of Western civilization. Lord, inspired by the monument's men, challenge us to sacrifice our lives for the greater good. We pray in your sovereign name. Amen.
Please be seated. Ladies and gentlemen, United States Representative from the 7th District of Massachusetts, the Honorable Mike Capuano.
So far, this is just a little bit too somber. I don't know. I guess I'm the only person who thinks you should clap after the national anthem. But, you know, she did a beautiful job. The band did a beautiful job, but no surprise. But thank you all very much. First of all, I want to congratulate the recipients and Mr. Edsel for actually doing this. Let's be honest. I just did what I was asked to do. But like too many Americans, I didn't know this story. Like many stories in World War II, I didn't know it until people like you told us. And to bring us heroes of this stature is just, to me, stunning and humbling. And to be perfectly honest, this is a celebration and an award to individuals, but I'd like to think, honestly, it's also a celebration of Americanism. Let's be honest. There have been many military conflicts in the history of mankind. No other country, no other civilization took people from their military and say, you save humanity's history. You save it. Every other people that bring war to this world, they destroy it, or they steal it for their own benefits. The fact that American leaders thought enough to understand that however the conflict ended, people would still be on this earth, people would still have a shared history, and they should recognize it and embrace it and celebrate it. And that we dedicated brave men and women to that task, I think is a great statement of who we are, and I hope who we will always be. So I thank the men and women who did this for us. I particularly thank Mr. Edsel for bringing their story forward. And I congratulate all Americans for creating a society that could not only have this done, but also could take a few minutes to say thank you and to recognize your work. Thank you all.
Ladies and gentlemen, United States Representative from the 12th District of Texas, the Honorable Kay Granger.
I've had a lifelong interest in art and in World War II. But those two topics never came together for me until I learned the fascinating story of the men and women who risked their lives in that war to save the finest art treasures of Europe. It's wonderful to look around here today and see so many prominent people who also recognize the importance of this amazing story. I especially want to recognize my friend, the acting Undersecretary of the Army, and hopefully future Secretary of the Army, the Honorable Eric Fanning. I learned about this story simply by eavesdropping on a conversation between Robert Edsel, author of a book called The Monuments Men, and Kay Fortson, whose family established the world-renowned Kimball Art Museum in my hometown of Fort Worth, Texas. Most of us thought all the stories of the Second World War had been told, but that isn't so. Robert Edsel, a lover of art himself, hunted the story down and made it his mission to tell of the bravery and the risk of those who were part of what we now come to call the Greatest Generation. As he came to know the survivors personally and understood their stories, Edsel established the Monuments Men Foundation to spread the word about these remarkable men and women. The story became an obsession, fortunately, for Robert Edsel, who is a story himself. He was not a writer or an artist, but he spent the last 12 years spreading the story so that we may appreciate what they have done and understand the risk they took to carry out their orders to find, protect, and return art that was stolen by the Nazis. More than 5 million pieces of art and literature were found by the Monuments Men. This art was stolen under orders from Hitler so that he could establish the largest art museum in the world as a tribute to himself. Hermann Göring said of his part in this, "I intend to plunder and do it thoroughly." President Franklin Roosevelt, who gave the order to find and protect this artwork, and Dwight W. Eisenhower, who oversaw the implementation of the order, said, "Whatever these paintings may have been to men who looked at them a generation back, today they are not only works of art, today they are symbols of the human spirit and of the world, the freedom of the human spirit made." To accept this work today is to assess and assert the purpose of the people of America, that the freedom of the human spirit and human mind, which has produced the world's great art and all of its science, shall not be utterly destroyed. As we see the destruction of art and architecture in the Middle East by terrorists like ISIS, it speaks to the world of their evil nature. These terrible acts sharply contrast with the work of the Monuments Men, whose story perfectly captures the value we place on history. The Monuments Men work not only to protect these timeless treasures, but also to return those treasures to the families and museums from which they were taken. They are truly heroes and more than deserve this Congressional Medal.
Ladies and gentlemen, United States Senator from Missouri, the Honorable Roy Blunt.
It's great to be with all of you here today, just like it was a real honor to get to work with Congresswoman Granger and Congressman Capuano and my friend Senator Menendez as we got the number of members in both the House and Senate to get interested in this thing that almost none of us have heard about before. Now, as has already been mentioned, we got a huge assist from Mr. Edsel and the Monuments Men Foundation. No small assist from a pretty good movie that came out at the time where John Goodman, who went to Missouri State University, played a character based on a sculptor from St. Louis. And I think one of the things that so many of us found out is the real connections we had and our states had to the great work that was done. Really, there were two goals in my mind here as we looked at this effort as we started. One was to draw attention to the 350 people that were part of this effort, the men and women that made this happen. Another was to call attention to what they did. You know, initially when this proposal was presented to President Roosevelt, it was thought that the main thing to be protected would be buildings and monuments and things that if they could stay out of the flow of war, we would do our best to see that that happened. Only later, as people began to understand the thievery, the looting, the plunder of the Nazi regime, did we realize as a country and as the people involved began to realize it was a much bigger project than they had thought it would be, because it would also be about restoring, about finding, about returning art to people that it belonged to and communities it belonged to. The art, the sculpture, the cultural icons that were taken away were important parts of the history and heritage of what we were trying to preserve. Probably nobody said that better than General Eisenhower when he, in his order, said that essentially the historical monuments, the cultural centers that symbolize the civilization we're trying to protect should not be lost in our effort to try to protect that civilization. We, as Congresswoman Granger mentioned, we see the exact reverse happening today in Palmyra, one of the great examples of destruction that can't be replaced. As Congressman Capuano mentioned, we see over and over again in the history of the world things that are lost in war that we, at least as a country, tried to lead the way in trying to preserve. There were 4 Missouri natives that were part of the Monuments Men, 10 people who later worked in Missouri, 2 of which were directors of the Nelson Atkins Art Gallery in St. Louis. The work and the effort of most of these people who, in spite of the dangerous things they did, were able to survive the war, went on for a long time, and the work they did in the war was usually, it appears now, not very much discussed. But what they did was always historic, what they did was often heroic, and certainly worthy of the Congressional Gold Medal.
Ladies and gentlemen, United States Senator from New Jersey, the Honorable Bob Menendez.
Today we celebrate with the presentation of the Congressional Gold Medal, the Monuments Men, the 350 men and women from 13 countries, including Harry Ettlinger of Rockaway, New Jersey, whose assignment it was to recover, protect, preserve, and return the art and artifacts that disappeared in World War II. Harry is New Jersey's Monuments Man, a German Jew whose family fled to the United States to escape the Nazis, and I'm proud to call him my friend. I'm also proud to have worked with my colleagues on legislation to award the Monuments Men the Congressional Gold Medal they deserve for what they did to save the world's cultural artifacts from being destroyed or lost forever. This wasn't an easy assignment. The fact that 2 Monuments Men were killed in action is evidence enough. But if it wasn't for their efforts, their courage, and their sacrifice, the world may have lost some of the greatest cultural treasures in existence. While the Nazis were trying to destroy Europe, these men and women were trying to save the culture of Europe, the culture of Western civilization, so that it would be preserved, sustained, and handed down to our children and our children's children. The cultural treasures that the Monument Men saved are on display in museums throughout the United States and the world. They recovered and protected works of art from Manet, Rembrandt, Vermeer, Leonardo da Vinci, Donatello, Michelangelo, that had been plundered by the Nazi army and was recovered by virtue of their efforts. And these artists and others are now on display throughout the United States. They worked with combat forces to ensure that great architectural works were not destroyed by the devastations of war. These men and women actually are responsible in many ways for the foundation upon which our modern American museum system exists, as many of the Monuments Men became the leaders of some of the greatest cultural institutes in our country. In one of the darkest chapters of human history, where man's inhumanity to their fellow man shocked the world, the Monuments Men were, by their actions, showing us the better angels of our humanity. Harry Ettlinger and all of the other 349 Monuments Men are truly heroes who did their duty and saved our cultural heritage, and now they deserve to be honored by Congress. We owe them our thanks, and the world owes them a debt of gratitude. The Congressional Gold Medal is the least that we can do. To all of them, and in their memory for what they did, we recognize them and we thank them on behalf of a grateful nation. May God bless them, and may God bless these United States of America.
Ladies and gentlemen, please turn your attention to the television screens for a video presentation.
Another view of the fate of art in war was presented to our soldiers when, at long last, we penetrated to the heart of Nazism. There, in caves, in mines, and in isolated mountain hideouts, we found that Hitler and his gang, with unerring instinct for enriching themselves, had stored art treasures, filched from their rightful owners throughout conquered Europe. Alongside bar and minted gold were found paintings, statues, tapestries, jewelry, and all else that the Nazis knew mankind would pay much to rescue and to preserve. The credit belongs to the officers and men of the combat echelons whose veneration for priceless treasures persisted, even in the heat and fears of battle.
We knew that there was looting going on and that Jews were being dispossessed first. So we were charged with much more than we knew and much more than we could encompass in our minds even, at least I was. So when we got over there, we were kind of felt like, felt like a knight in armor, looking for good things I could do in recuperation of art.
The feeling I had about doing something to salvage Western culture, it was exhilarating. Finally, we could do something positive.
These are the property of all peoples. They're the heritage of the human race, not just the country that they happen to be in. And consequently, even though in enemy territory, we should protect them.
God bless us. God bless our allies for thinking of this. It was an honor to work for the MFA.
It was as close to a disinterested organization of doing good as I was ever involved with.
This small group in the Monument Fine Arts and Archives section established a philosophy that was really new as far as civilization was concerned. The whole concept of not taking spoils of war and returning the rightful property to the rightful owner was a momentous event in civilization.
That for democracy, at least, there always stands beyond the materialism and destructiveness of war the ideals for which it is fought. It is our privilege to pass on to the coming centuries treasures of past ages.
Ladies and gentlemen, historian and author, Mr. Robert M. Edsall.
Mr. Speaker, members of Congress, ambassadors, and other honored guests, we are gathered to celebrate the achievements of some 350 men and women from 14 nations who served in the Monuments, Fine Arts, and Archives section. We now know these men and scholar soldiers as the Monuments Men. Only 6 are still living. Anne Olivier Bell and Reuben Sammy were unable to travel. However, Bernard Taper, Richard Barancic, Motoko Fujishiro Huthwaite, and Harry Ettlinger are with us today. So too are 175 family members of Monuments Men since passed. Our founding fathers committed to us the cause of freedom. The Monuments Men did no less for the respect and preservation of our shared cultural treasures. As early as 1942, George Stout, who would become the leader of the Monuments Men in Europe and establish their operation in post-war Japan, argued for the creation of cultural preservation officers during war. To safeguard these things will not affect the course of battles, Stout wrote, but it will affect the relations of invading armies with those people and their governments. To safeguard these things will show respect for the beliefs and customs of all men and will bear witness that these things belong not only to a particular people, but also to the heritage of mankind. The death of 2 Monuments Men during combat, British Major Ronald Balfour and American Captain Walter Hutchhausen, would seem to argue that art is worth the loss of life. But Monuments Man Dean Keller, an artist himself, who missed his son's 3rd, 4th, and 5th birthdays while serving in Italy, stated otherwise. The life of one American boy is worth infinitely more than any monument I know, Keller said. But like the other Monuments Men, he risked their lives not to save beautiful objects, but to defend the very cause George Stout wrote about in 1942, preservation of our shared cultural heritage. Dare to dream big dreams, because today's celebration, the culmination of 9 years of service to these men and women, is a dream come true for me. And thanks to the dedicated work of several authors, researchers, archivists, and an attorney who are among our audience, and the longtime advocacy of the Monuments Men Foundation for the Preservation of Art, the achievements of these heroes of civilization are now widely known. We live in hope that the wisdom of George Stout, the sacrifices of Monuments Men Balfour and Hutchhausen, and the dedication of all those who served in the Monuments, Fine Arts, and Archives section will not reside in our memory. Rather, that they will live in our hearts to inspire us to do a far better job protecting and preserving those things of knowledge and beauty that we have inherited from the past.
Ladies and gentlemen, the United States Army Band, Pershing's Own, and the United States Army Voices.
I'll be seeing you in all the old familiar places that this heart of mine embraces all day through. In that small cafe, the park across the way, the children's carousel, the chestnut tree, a wishing well. I'll be seeing you in every lovely summer's day, in everything that's light and gay. I'll always think of you that way. I'll find you in the morning sun, and when the night is new, I'll be looking at the moon, but I'll be seeing you. Don't sit under the apple tree with anyone else but me. Anyone else but me. Anyone else but me. No, no, no. Don't sit under the apple tree with anyone else but me till I come marching home. Don't go walking down Lover's Lane with anyone else but me. Anyone else but me. Anyone else but me. No, no, no. Don't go walking down Lover's Lane with anyone else but me till I come marching home. I'm so afraid the plans we made beneath those moonlit skies will fade away. You're bound to stray if stars get in your eyes. So don't sit under the apple tree with anyone else but me till I come marching home. Home, 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 sweet home. Just wait till I come marching home. So don't go walking down a lover's lane, no. Walking down a lover's lane till you see me. When you see me marching home, then we'll go arm in arm and sit down under the apple tree. Baby, just you and me. When I come marching home.
Ladies and gentlemen, the Democratic leader of the United States House of Representatives, the Honorable Nancy Pelosi.
Good afternoon, everyone. Mr. Speaker, Mr. Leader, Mr. Leader. For our speaker, this is his last gold medal ceremony, and so it's an emotional time for many reasons, including that. Thank you, Mr. Speaker, for making it so lovely. I want to join in acknowledging the leadership of Senator Menendez, Senator Blount, Senator Madam Chair Granger, Congressman Capuano of Massachusetts. Robert Edsel, you're a hero to us. Thank you. Thank you so much. As author, founder, and chairman of the Monuments Men Foundation and Preservation of Art, you have done such a large part in preserving art as well. Thank you. We're honored by your presence. In March of 1941, President Franklin Roosevelt dedicated the National Gallery of Art just down the mall from here. As the crowd gathered, Britain struggled beneath the bombs of the Blitz. Nazi occupiers looted the finest art of Western Europe and ransacked the property of Jewish families, a vast program of theft and destruction. And with the world at war, as the President Roosevelt opened a new American home for the world's masterworks, President Roosevelt spoke the fundamental truth at the heart of what the Monument Men's mission was. He said this: whatever these paintings may have been to men and women who looked at them generations back, today they are not only works of art, today they are the symbols of the human spirit, symbols of the world the freedom of the human spirit has made. As we saw in the film, President Eisenhower said, these are the ideals for which the war was fought. Thank you, Anne Eisenhower, for honoring us with your presence today as well. The men and women of the Monuments, Fine Arts, and Archives section were charged with a staggering responsibility by then General Eisenhower. Across a whole world set ablaze by war's destruction, against the last thrashes of the Nazis' nihilism, preserve the treasures of humanity. That was the charge. Ranging thousands of miles, operating with few resources and little direct authority, the Monuments Men often relied more on their own grit, ingenuity, and power of persuasion than other things. As just a handful of men and women, I want to emphasize the women, and never more than a few hundred, they fought to rescue millions of artifacts in Axis hands and protect them through the fire of the Allies' military advance. Some gave their lives in the effort. But thanks to the Monument Men, the war that claimed so much, that took the lives of so many, would not also destroy the creativity that connects us to the heritage of civilization. And because of their perseverance and painstaking detective work, millions and millions of artifacts were saved for the public and or returned to their rightful owners. The poet Shelley once wrote, "The greatest force for moral good is imagination." It is imagination that gives us the creativity and of the arts, that our common humanity finds a home. We see what we have in common. We understand other people's thinking. So this was not just about the objects, it was about the creativity and the imagination, which is a force for good. With the last living Monuments Men among us, and women, we stand in the presence of greatness. Thank you for your greatness of courage, your greatness of commitment. Sergeant Harry Ettlinger, we'll be hearing from you. Private First Class Richard Baranchik, thank you and welcome. Motoko Fujishiro Huthwaite, thank you, ma'am. And Lieutenant Bernard Taper of Berkeley and my city of San Francisco. You saw him in the film. I also want to acknowledge, because as was said earlier, so many family members are here, just to name one more, Maya Melrose attending ceremony on behalf of her great aunt, Mary Regan Quessenberry, another woman of the monuments. But thank you to all of the family members who are here. As we present the Congressional Gold Medal to the Monuments Men and Women, we recognize the truth of our own to add President Roosevelt's wisdom at the National Gallery. I'm so happy that so many ambassadors are here. Welcome, ambassadors, to be with us as we observe that today the art of the MFAA returned, the monuments they saved, these things stand not only as artifacts of the inspiration, devotion, and artistry of distant ages, they endure as testimony to the boundless determination, passion, and creativity of the men and women we are proud to honor with this gold medal ceremony today. Your receiving it, my friends, brings luster to this honor. Congratulations and thank you.
Ladies and gentlemen, the Democratic leader of the United States Senate, the Honorable Harry Reid.
In a war against humanity, nothing is sacred to the aggressors. So it was for the Axis powers during World War II. As our troops rolled across the globe, millions of innocent people and entire countries and cultures fell victim to this war machine. But as we've learned, even history itself was threatened by Adolf Hitler and his accomplices. Historic structures were bombed into oblivion. Museums were plundered. Priceless family heirlooms were lost forever. Sadly, though, the battle against art, culture, and our own history is being waged today. We've heard a number of my friends prior to my speaking mention this. The vile terrorist group ISIS wantonly destroys vestiges of some of the world's most ancient civilizations. ISIS recently bulldozed the ancient city of Hatra, which was established by Alexander the Great 300 years before Christ. ISIS destroyed the holy site, believed to be the tomb of the prophet Jonah. And recently, ISIS used large quantities of explosives to destroy a 2,000-year-old Phoenician temple in Syria. ISIS then publicly executed a professor of antiquities for refusing to reveal the location of more archaeological treasures. In Afghanistan, the Taliban has destroyed giant sandstone statues of Buddha that were 1,700 years old. That's not all. In Timbuktu, terrorists set fire to a library containing thousands and thousands of priceless manuscripts dating back to the 13th century. And with each artifact that's destroyed, each ancient ruin is crushed, and each culture toppled, a small piece of humanity is lost for eternity. That's what makes today so significant. Today we praise the brave men and women who fought to preserve and restore the remnants of our past. What started as just a handful of artists, curators, and educators swelled to about 400 servicemen and civilians. These courageous individuals safeguarded humanity's prized possessions in the midst of the world's most heinous war. It was an honor for me, before we came here, to meet each of you individually. I'll always remember that. And to the families of the hundreds of monument men and women who are no longer with us, I say this: you should be very proud. Your loved ones served as guardians of history. As for the rest of us, it's not enough to recognize the accomplishments of the monuments men, because if we neglect to act now to preserve what ISIS and others have not destroyed, we will have failed. We must honor the work of the monuments men and women by emulating their courage and following in their footsteps. Thank you very much.
Ladies and gentlemen, the Majority Leader of the United States Senate, the Honorable Mitch McConnell.
A few years ago, Louisville's Speed Art Museum unveiled an exhibit entitled Kentucky Home: The Colonial Revival Houses of Stratton O. Hammond. Since designing his first house as a teenager in the 1920s, Hammond went on to become one of the most popular architects of the last century. His homes still dot the streets of Louisville today. I'm pleased to report that Stratton Hammond is also a fellow graduate of DuPont Manual High School. He set the bar very high for those of us who followed, and not just because of his architecture. Hammond joined the Army in World War II. He participated in the Normandy invasion in 1944. And thanks to his background in art and architecture, he eventually settled into the Palace of Versailles as monuments officer at General Eisenhower's headquarters. This Kentuckian, who unfortunately passed away in 1997, is one of the hundreds of monuments men we honor today. These men and women came from different countries. They hailed from vastly different backgrounds, but they shared a common mission: to defend colonnades of civilization through crucibles of war. One man would flee Nazi Germany the day after his bar mitzvah, only to return and liberate hundreds of looted cultural treasures in the salt mines of Heilbronn. Another, a Scottish-born, London-raised, and American-educated writer, would become an art detective who helped recover priceless paintings. There's the native Chicagoan who would assist in the movement of recovered stolen art in Western Germany. And in the Pacific Theater, there's the American-born typist who would generate field reports for monuments men in Tokyo. These four men and women came from different circumstances. They each contributed in their own way, but all advanced an important mission that could have easily been overlooked. And all these four people are with us here today. You know, after their service, many of the monuments men quickly blended back into society, as artists, for instance, or as curators. Even Stratton Hammond returned to his architectural firm in Kentucky, though it's worth mentioning that his firm began specializing in the effects of explosives on structural integrity. The point is that the service of the monuments men often went unheralded, even though it had changed them. Yet we owe the men and women who served a real debt of gratitude. Without their service, we may have won a war, but lost our common heritage. So the gold medal we present today is our country's way of saying that the service should not only be recognized, but celebrated. It's our nation's way of saying thank you.
Ladies and gentlemen, the Speaker of the United States House of Representatives, the Honorable John Boehner.
In a few moments, we'll have the presentation of the medal, and at that time I'll ask our honorees to join us here on the stage. But as some of you may know, this is the last time that I'm going to have this privilege. And really, it's been quite a privilege. In the opening, I mentioned the first person to be awarded a Congressional Gold Medal was General George Washington himself in 1776. Well, as you can imagine, things got a little busy after that. And so it took about 14 years for Washington to actually get that medal. Over that time, 4 different people were in charge of the project, including none other than Thomas Jefferson. Jefferson kept detailed notes on how the medals should be executed. He found a way to pay for all of it, and he had the work done in France. He then personally delivered the medal to Washington in New York, along with a box of medals for his men. That's a chain of preservation which today's honorees can certainly appreciate. But because our founders followed through on this and on so many other things, we have this great tradition that's older than the country itself. We have this golden link to a time when America was merely this radical idea that anyone could contribute to the common good. So just look at who we're honoring today. A small group of people who, acting purely on their own passion and courage, reclaimed the world's most valuable treasures. They reattached the tendons to the bone that is civilization's identity. Ladies and gentlemen, we're the luckiest people on earth. We get to tell these stories. We get to toast our heroes. And we get to fall in love with freedom all over again. Because knowing who we're from shows our children what they can be. No task is more precious than that. No award is greater than this. And so for the Monuments Men, the United States Mint has struck a Congressional Gold Medal, which we will present now and always on behalf of a grateful nation. Congratulations. All right, we're going to do the presentation of the medal here. So right here at the beginning. There we go. Thank you.
Ladies and gentlemen, Monument Men Veteran, Mr. Harry Ettlinger.
Ladies and gentlemen, 72 years ago, during World War II, the United States established a policy that made the preservation of artistic and cultural treasures of Europe a priority. This was contrary to the policies of the leaders of our enemy, who not only prioritized the murders of millions, but also the destruction of art and culture they deemed inferior. Thus, a relatively tiny international group of men and women, led by the United States and the United Kingdom, embarked on implementing this new policy. The mission was dangerous. 2 monuments men were killed in combat to protect works of art. In the closing month of the war, what this small group discovered was nothing less than the greatest blunder ever perpetrated in the history of civilization. I'll get to the page. Today, only 5 Americans and 1 British, now referred to as monuments men, are still alive. 4, and Robert Edsel, our champions, are here today. I, the babies of these soldiers, on behalf of the monuments men alive and those who have gone to the great beyond, graciously accept this great honor that the members of Congress of the United States of America have bestowed upon us today. At the end of the war, World War II, the policies of Western allies made clear that these, the victors, do not belong to the spoils of war. Let us today openly restate this policy. Let us today openly promote the concept. Let us again and again announce to the people of the world that their culture will be cherished as long as they respect the culture of others. God bless you. God bless America.
Ladies and gentlemen, the United States Army Band, Pershing Zone, and the United States Army Voices.
He was a famous trumpet man from out Chicago way. He had a boogie style that no one else could play. He was a top man at his craft, but then his number came up and he was gone with the draft. He's in the army now, a blowing reveille. He's the boogie woogie bugle boy of Company B. They made him blow a bugle for his Uncle Sam. It really brought him down because he couldn't jam. The captain seemed to understand, because the next day the cap went out and drafted a band, and now the company jumps when he plays reveille. He's the boogie woogie bugle boy of Company B. A root, a toot, a tootly-odded toot. He blows it A to the bar. A boogie rhythm, he can't blow a note unless the bass and guitar is playing with him. He makes the company jump when he plays reveille. He's the boogie woogie bugle boy of Company B. He was some boogie woogie bugle boy of Company B. And when he plays boogie woogie bugle, he was busy as be. And when he plays, he makes the company jump A to the bar. He's the boogie woogie bugle boy of Company B. Tootly tootly yada tootly yada toot toot. He blows it A to the bar. He can't blow a note unless the bass and guitar is playing with him. And the company jumps when he plays reveille. He's the boogie woogie bugle boy of Company B. The boys asleep with boogie every night and wakes them up the same way in the early light. They clap their hands and stamp their feet because they know how he plays. When someone gives him a beat, he really breaks it up when he plays reveille. He's the boogie woogie bugle boy of Company B. A root, a toot, a toot, toot toot. He blows it A to the bar. Can't blow it out unless bass and guitar is. Whoa!
Ladies and gentlemen, please stand as the chaplain of the United States House of Representatives, the Reverend Patrick Conroy, gives the benediction.
Let us pray. God of power, God of justice, it is because of the weakness and failures of our human nature that the terror of war so often plagues the human family. And yet it is during wartime that the greatness of human spirit is so often demonstrated. The many depredations committed by the Nazis during World War II included the decided effort to confiscate for their own gratification all the priceless works of art throughout Europe, as well as the elimination of art considered degenerate according to their racist creed. Without the monuments men and women, many of the most important treasures of European culture would have been lost. Today, only 6 remain: Anne Oliver Popham Bell, Reuben Sammy, Richard Barancik, Bernard Taper, Motoko Fujishiro Huthwaite, Harry Ettlinger, Alf Ettlingen. May the breath of God uphold their noble and heroic story. And may God's gift of artistic genius, wherever it emerges, no matter upon whom it is bestowed, be honored and protected by all peoples and all nations of goodwill. As we honor yet another heroic group of soldiers from World War II, we ask your blessing on all women and men in military service, their families, and all those who put themselves in harm's way for the safety of others. God, bless America, and grant us peace both in the present and with you forever. Amen.
Ladies and gentlemen, please be seated for the departure of the official party.
Des morts.